So, a while back I read a wholesome little story by the name of Crossed. If you don't know what that is, then it would be reasonable to keep it that way. It's an infamous apocalypse story about a virus that instead of turning people into mindless zombies, it just turns them into depraved, torturous Jeffrey Dahmers that still have a good amount of their mental faculties. And from what I read, it had some surprisingly good writing at times that just got drowned out by the over-the-top torture porn. Because that's the thing with writing very bleak, hellish apocalypses. You have to balance some thought-provoking horror with the disgusting atrocities born of such a world. But what Crossed never managed to make me do was think that survival wasn't worth it anymore. It definitely had moments where mercy killings and tactical suicides were the best options, but it also felt like there was at least the slightest hope for a future that wasn't just hell on earth. Which is something I cannot say about the Dogscape. A story where humanity's indomitable will for survival is more so a curse than a virtue. Back in 2011, a collaborative narrative was born on the most compassionate website of all, 4chan, where multiple users started to write tales and log entries for a post-apocalyptic world covered entirely in dog flesh. Tales from the Dogscape had many contributing authors, which is great, although it also resulted in a few inconsistencies and two stories that were so bad I refused to acknowledge them as canon. But the basics are pretty easy to follow. Some sort of experiment or bioweapon resulted in the creation of the Dog Mother, a tumorous, ever-expanding organism made out of canine biological material. This mess quickly overwhelmed humanity and spread all around the globe, consuming nature itself and repurposing it into more dog flesh, until it essentially became nature. Those that survived had to adapt to a completely different and hostile world. Infrastructure was a thing of the past, medicine, agriculture and organized society became impossible. There were countless maws filled with canine teeth ready to chew anything that fell into them. Moving around in general was a more difficult task considering the ground was made out of flesh now, and there were no more Scooby snacks. But at least there were some other options for nutrition. The survivors fed on pup fetuses that grew from the dog trees and drank milk from the dog mother's countless tits. At that point I would just say, take the L, man. Like, come on, humanity had a good run, it was nice while it lasted and all, but enduring such degradation, essentially devolving into oversized sticks, is just not worth it in my opinion. But nonetheless, humanity persevered. They made fires out of greasy fur, tools out of the canine's bone, and clothes out of dog leather. Society regressed into a more primitive state with a handful of scattered tribes and lone nomads as the only inhabitants of the Dogscape. Well, not really the only inhabitants. Regular dogs were still around, although becoming rarer and rarer, made obsolete by the new omnipresent ecosystem, same as humans. Ticks were doing great at least. One of the nomads retold his encounter with a man covered in monstrous ticks. Not a single inch of his skin left uninhabited. The sound of their scuttling legs emanating from under the man's ruined clothes. He could only muster a single word with a raspy voice. Each. But the ticks were merely a nuisance compared to the chimeras, unholy hybrids of dog and human with mouths spanning along their disproportionate arms and screaming human faces protruding from their torso. They wander the Dogscape attacking any human they cross paths with, their only weakness being that the very ground they walked despised them and saw them as abominations. Canine mouths opening up just to swallow them back into the endless flesh they came from, like demons being dragged back to hell. What is it like to be consumed by the Dogscape? One survivor reminisced about his dog, Carl, his loyal companion that stayed with him through thick and thin. Until one of the many mouths swallowed him whole. It would be after many years that Carl and his owner united. Only it wasn't the same Carl from before. He was stretched out, and he beat his former master and would not let go. Could humans become one with the Dogscape, you may ask? Well, a former soldier that was now just another human flea upon the Dog Mother should have asked himself this. The soldier reminisced about the war against the Dogscape, about how tanks and nukes barely slowed it down, about how it was drinking the oceans and eating nature itself, about how the generals all committed suicide one by one, about the chorus of abhorrent howling and screeching, his face flooded with involuntary tears before he started to scream profanities, cursing the endless expanse of flesh that took his friends and family and his species. He beat and tore and chewed at the flesh with nothing except his rage and hands as his implement, until he was knee-deep in blood and gore. One of the tubes he tore spilled some sort of digestive fluid all over him. It burned, but he had to go on. He dug and dug with his bare hands until the ground started to close above him. He kept digging until he found them, the heart and the brain. He laughed at his fortune of finding both of them so close to each other. He jammed his hands deep into the grey matter, disturbing the contents and slowly losing oxygen in his tunnel of meat. He gasped and clawed at the heart. Tearing it out of place, he collapsed and blacked out. He awoke to many tentacles burying themselves in his body. One hit his spinal cord and fused with his brainstem. A flood of thought hit him all at once as he suddenly became one with the dogscape. More tentacles connected themselves to his vital organs. As he became assimilated, he saw through every eye in the lands and he felt every single nerve on the planet. The divine immune system continued tearing him apart, but also adding new pathways and connections. It wasn't long until he was entirely consumed. His memories faded away as his brain was reorganized into replacing the one he had destroyed. Slowly but surely, the people with any recollection of a world not made of dogs all went mad or died off, but humanity itself persevered. Generation after generation walking the expanse of dog biomatter, humans being tempered into surviving the dogscape with the price of their dignity as a species. Up until now I spoke only of the interesting horror aspects of Tales from the Dogscape, but same as with Crossed, it also goes into the territory of depraved, disgusting degeneracy. After centuries of humanity barely scraping by, women became very scarce, resulting in the tribes of the Dogscape becoming barbaric rapist slavers essentially. And when the tribes lose their women, the majority of the men become dependent on the dog mother for sex, same as they are for everything else. They find the sex organ to claim for their own and spend their days thrusting into it. Often they find entrances near the dog trees, fucking when they're desirous and eating the fetuses when they're hungry. They have no reason ever to move from their mound. In this way, men forget the world around them and become obsessed with mother dog. Now not only a mother, but a lover too. It is their everything. It is common to see skeletons either bare or being picked apart by dogs, their pelvises still pressing into a dog mound, surrounded by the still reeking stench of their own filth. Obsolete animals that have forgotten their own humanity. I mean, doggy style is alright, but come on man, really? This also might just be the origin of the human-dog chimeras, but who's to say? After 7 centuries of humanity's degradation, any natural-born child revolts the dogscape itself. When a new birth occurs, the fleshy ground opens a mouth and assimilates the child into itself. All that desperate suffering and surviving was for nothing, for there never was a future to be salvaged from the dogscape. Humanity's biological imperative to survive was a torturous curse that damned them to disgraceful descent into savagery. The last wanderer of the dogscape headed south, and he kept going even as the weather got colder and the nights got longer, the dog flesh beneath him rumbling more and more as he headed to his unknown destination. No path to follow but ahead. The ground started to subtly slope downwards as he advanced, his limbs blackening and going numb beneath his crude clothes made out of greasy fur. The only reason the wanderer survived was because a great canyon of viscera opened up beneath him. Seeing this as his only opportunity for sustenance, he climbed down and drank his fill of warm blood. He climbed out just as the wound healed itself. He looked back before leaving and, considering it a stretch mark, the mother was still growing. Days go on of walking the frigid cold before he reaches a massive heap of cold and lifeless dog legs. He climbs down and gasps. He was the first to step off the dog mother in ages. To him, what could possibly be not the mother? He keeps walking, barely clinging to life for hours, and then he finally sees it. A flickering light on a pole, and beneath it there were structures that looked to be made out of solid bone, but they were not made out of dog flesh. He enters out of pure luck when his back gets caught on the doorknob whilst resting against the door. The dark, dry cave before him seemed so alien, with the soft white skins hanging on the walls and the strange markings everywhere. He was at his rope's end, dying of hypothermia, and the cold was blowing fiercely inside the room where he entered. Another door was further into the room, so he tried pulling on the doorknob, but nothing happened. He rests against it, his eyes going dreary. He could barely make out some more markings written on the door. Close outer door first. Words from a world that was made for humans. Words that meant nothing to the dying man leaning on the door. Words that provided him no comfort as he fell asleep without ever waking up. The man died without ever opening the door and witnessing what lied beyond it. A cold, dead, desiccated body sat huddled before the radio systems in a chair. At its feet lay the curled, dead body of a mutt. Yeah, so I'm more of a cat person myself, but what do you think? Would you rather face the dogscape or the crossed? Because you're gonna face both unless you like, subscribe, comment and say something nice about my hair in that order. This is like the 5th time I threatened the fate worse than death to those who didn't validate my channel's algorithm. And it's not the last. See ya next time, creatures.